Yes.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Investor Lab. You're joining us live for the Investor Lab Live. Gabby, did you remember sending music down?
I'm doing it.
You're doing it. All right, cool. We're on. All right, we're getting a bit better every single week. Welcome. Let us know if you're here in the chat. We are once again live. My name is Goose, and Gabby's name is Gabby.
Oh shit! I'm so sorry. My name is Gabby. Damn it!
And we're joined by the stunning Spaniard Andy Bernardos.
Yay!
Andy, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Very good. Thank you. Very good. So, guys, let us know if you're joining us here live in the chat. As you know, we love to see you here. We love to hear from you. We love the interaction. We are going to be digging into. Hey, Lindsay. Hey, Bex. Hey, Jared. Great to see you guys.
Hey,
we're going to be digging into a really, really good topic today. We are going to be actually not just digging into a topic. We are going to be doing something live with you and going to help you to build a property portfolio growth plan so you can achieve financial freedom when most others can't. Yay! It's absolutely free. You get access to world-class technology. It's awesome. But before we do that, let's talk about why we even need to create a plan. Why don't we just go buy houses? Why don't we just go buy them up and hope for the best? Well, because statistically speaking, it doesn't work. Statistically speaking, most property investors don't actually achieve financial freedom. And I know we were talking about this a little bit before on the podcast. But if I said to you, hey, would you like to invest in an asset class where the goal of investing in this asset class is to create financial freedom, but guess what? 99% of people don't achieve financial freedom. That just sounds crazy. Hey, would you like to invest in this asset class with a goal that 99% of people don't achieve? Look, that sounds bizarre. Like that sounds like fun. Like that is so fundamentally bizarre. Yet that is the truth. That is the truth that faces most people. Most people don't achieve financial freedom through property. And it's not because property doesn't work. Anyone who's listened to this podcast before knows that certainly my point of view is there is no better risk-adjusted return than Australian residential real estate. So you have the best possible asset to give you the best possible returns, yet still less than 1% of property investors actually achieve financial freedom. If that doesn't tell you that something is broken, I don't know what else does. And speaking of broken, we have to even ask ourselves the question of like, well, why is it important to build a portfolio? Why don't I just buy a house? Why do I even invest? And that goes back to the single point that the whole reason we need to invest is because money is broken, is because we need to find a way to transport our economic energy through time and space in a way that previous generations didn't have to. In fact, just as a little kind of a side note, a little anecdote, the reason, by the way, we didn't do a live episode last week is because we were visiting family. We were in Australia visiting. Gabby and I were in Australia. Andy's not part of our family, so Andy wasn't there. Welcome to the episode, Andy. But Andy was not with us visiting our family. Gabby and I were visiting our families.
Andy was just here on his own.
Andy was just sitting in the waiting room waiting for this podcast since last week.
Wrong week.
That's why he's looking so dehydrated. He hasn't had a drink, nothing. It's crazy. Commitment. That's commitment.
Very patient.
But so we were visiting my mum and dad in the town that I grew up in. They still live in that town. And the very first house that we had, that was the kind of the house that I was born in and all of that kind of stuff, was a 3-bedroom brick house on a 1/4-acre block in a regional town in Australia. And I asked Dad, I said, hey, Dad, how much did that property cost when you bought it? It was brand new. It was house and land. So they bought the land, built the house. So a brand new house. From scratch, brick, everything, tile, the works. That house cost, I think he said $33,000. And that was in 1983 that he bought that property. That was in 1983. And I said to him, how much were you earning at that time? Now, at that time, both my mum and my dad were working because it was before both me and my brother were born. About a year later, my brother was born. But at that point in time, at that specific point in time, there was 2 incomes. But I just said, Dad, how much were you earning? How much were you making at that point in time? And he said, oh, well, I was earning this much an hour. We did the maths, and it worked out to be about $35,000 a year. I think it was from memory. So with 1 year's salary of 1 income in a dual income household, they were able to buy a good quality house in a great neighborhood. Brick, like not cheap materials, like a good quality standard family home on a 1/4-acre block with a big tree in the backyard and a big tin shed. Classic Australian dream. 1 year's income, 1 year, 1 year's income for on a single income. You can't do that today. I spoke to someone yesterday who's 29 years old, earning $250,000 to $280,000 a year. That puts her in the top 1% of earners for her age group. Even she can't buy a home on 1 year's worth of income. In fact, if you look at Bondi, it takes 29 years of the average salary to afford to buy one house. The house price to income ratio in Bondi is 29-1. The average income in Bondi is about $145,000, and the average house is about 4.1 million. It's 29-1. And what's happened between our parents' generation and now is a bifurcation in the value of assets versus our wages. It is now no longer possible through the fruits of your labor to provide a good future for you and your family and to set you up. You can't rely on your super because your super is an outperforming monetary debasement. You can't rely on a pension because we have an aging population, which means that the pension system is not going to work long term. The pension system only works if you continuously have more younger people than older people, because they need to be able to prop up the cost of the system to pay the pension. That's why super was invented, because the government knew that the super system was the pension system was going to fail eventually. But the super system only gets you broadly market returns, something like 6, 7, 8% returns a year. Monetary debasement in Australia is about 10% a year, right? So you are not outrunning that. You're not even effectively storing your economic energy. And so once upon a time, you didn't have to invest. You could save, you could spend, you could do all of this kind of stuff, and you could live a good life. But now, if you want any hope of creating a better life for you and your family, if you want to set yourself up for future generations, if you look at the difference between how hard it is for you today versus how hard it is was for your parents, and if you play that forward into the future and then ask yourself how much harder is it going to be again for your kids, you'll realize that you don't have a choice but to invest. This is now no longer an optional. This is a necessity. And in fact, I was talking to a really good friend of mine when we were in Melbourne, and he's a teacher, and it's quite hilarious because I call him a dirty commie, and I'm clearly a capitalist. It's great fun. We've been friends since kindergarten, right? So, yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome. We always have really great intellectual and philosophical discussions. But he's a school teacher, right? And he raised a great point that I hadn't actually thought about before. He said that our generation is the first generation who is not going to enjoy more prosperity than the previous generation. So if you think back to your grandparents, their kids, i.e. your parents, had available to them much more prosperity and much more opportunity than their grandparents. I think about my grandparents. My grandma used to tell stories about how they had to walk along the train lines, picking up pieces of coal so they could use that to go and cook food because they were so poor in England. My parents' generation, great. Now, our generation is struggling more financially, doesn't have the same opportunities. And why? Because we've got fundamentally broken money. And our generation today, when I say our generation, but Bex with no shoes, by the way, with no shoes, walking along the train lines, picking up pieces of coal to go home and heat the house and cook food. It was crazy. Now, our generation, when I say our generation, I'm talking to all of you people out there who are between 25 and 45, round about that age group, which is probably most of the people listening to the show, but also anyone else. If you willingly have children today, you're probably doing that. You're going to be the first generation that's almost making a conscious decision to bring children into the world that are going to have less prosperity than you, and you've already got less prosperity than your parents. This is a system that is designed to take people backwards, not forwards. I don't mean designed in some kind of like conspiracy theory way. It's just a fundamentally broken architecture that is leading us into a position where you don't have a choice but to invest, unless you want to continue to walk down a path of lower and lower prosperity, a lower and lower opportunity, right? It's wild. And so it is your responsibility to yourself, to your family, to your children, and to the people around you that you can inspire through your actions to do what you can to get ahead and to show people what's possible. Because remember, building wealth is one of the greatest impacts you can have on society. Because not only is it going to directly and indirectly benefit the people around you, but you're going to inspire others. You're going to show people what's possible. When everybody else thinks that all hope is lost, and then you can show up and show them that it was possible for you and you were just like them, that gives them a beacon of hope, that gives them a path to walk, that gives them the recognition that there is an opportunity for them to achieve success too. And so it's one of the greatest social responsibilities that we've got right now. And so the whole fundamental reason you need to build a portfolio is so that you can do all of that, so that you can provide, so you can be that person. It is not enough to go and buy one property. You will not achieve financial freedom with one property. You will get financially better off. So if all you can do is one property, if your situation dictates that the only thing you can do is buy one property, then you should do that because you are still going to be better off than if you did nothing. If your choice is between doing nothing and doing one thing, do one thing, because that one thing will take you further than doing nothing, which is guaranteed to take you backwards. And everyone always says all investment carries risk, and that is true. But the only thing that has got a 100% certainty of failure is doing nothing. And so your options are 100% certainty of failure, doing nothing, or taking a chance, taking a bold step towards a better future and being willing to try. Now, I want to go back in the Wayback Machine because we want to talk about talk a little bit about how we got to building these portfolio plans and why they're important. Okay, because once upon a time when we first started this business, and Gabby and Andy, thank you for allowing me to wander off into this diatribe. When we very first started this business, Dashdot, most business owners, when they get their first client, they jump up and down for joy. They go, "Oh my God, it's real! Yay, we're making money," or something like that. That's the story you kind of hear. Like, when the guy from Nike sold his first pair of shoes, he was like, "Oh my God, it's real!" All of this kind of stuff. When we got our very first client back in 2019, who's still a client today, he's bought multiple properties with us now. He was in a situation where he had tried to invest and he'd failed. I think he'd bought one or two properties and they had both failed and he'd lost money. He was a father and a husband and a father of two children, two young children. And he had stuffed it up and he only had one shot left. And so he was terrified. He was terrified about making the wrong decision because he knew if he didn't get it right, he was not going to set him and his family up for success moving forward. So he was scared. But he decided to trust us. And in that moment when he decided to work with us and trusted us and paid us, I didn't jump up and down for joy. I didn't go, Yahoo, look at this, yay. I went, holy shit. He trusts me more than he trusts himself with his financial future. Wow. What a responsibility. Now, we were very confident that we could deliver great results, but we also knew that we might make mistakes. And we're good people. We have good intentions. In an industry full of grime, we knew that we were going to have to fight against negative reputations. We knew that we were going to have to fight against the reputation of an industry which has a bad reputation. And we're good people who wanted to do good work. But what if, despite our best work and our best intentions, we still made a mistake? What if we did our best work and that still led this client to not achieve the financial future he desired? It's that single driver. And I still remember it vividly today. I still have the same feeling in my chest when I think about it. It is that single driver that made us go from day one, well, we better invest and get bloody good at minimizing risk for our clients. And so the way that panned out, the way that worked out over the years is we started by going, okay, how can we find the right property in the right place at the right time? How can we get so good at identifying how to get into markets? What would the right property be? How do we get great returns? How do we get so good at that we just minimize the risk? You can never get risk to zero, but what could we do to minimize the risk? So we ended up building tech. The journey goes along and, a couple of years pass and we start building technology. And the first suite of technology we built was algorithms and stuff designed to identify the perfect entry point to get into the market. And our clients were getting amazing results. Everyone's making a ton of money. We're like, this is fantastic. But then we had a realization. The right property for me might not be the right property for you. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone may have similar but slightly different goals, and their financial circumstances are different. And so and by the way, we also worked out that there was these things that we call constraints in every property portfolio. And if we didn't optimize for constraints, it doesn't matter how good a performance you get, you can still get stuck. And if you got stuck, then you wouldn't get enough properties to be able to create the financial freedom you desire. You can still build wealth, and that is good. And you can still end up further ahead, and that is good. But you know what's better than good? Actually getting to your goals. That's good. Like, that's better. That's success. And so we realized that if we wanted to not just help people make money, but we actually wanted to help people to achieve their goals, we had to take a more strategic approach, an approach that necessarily demanded that we think critically about how, where, and why people might get stuck and what is going to stop them from getting to their goals. How do we think about it in advance, not when we get there? How do we look a little bit into the distance? And that's when we started building what has now become the portfolio growth plan technology. Now, back when we very first started, and Gabby, maybe you might remember, it was in 2020 or 2021 when we first started building that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was in 20. It was around 2020 and 2021 when we started building it. And when we started building it, it was the world's most complicated spreadsheet.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful in its complexity, but it was so crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, it worked. And so that was the foundation. We started working on it then. We started trying to solve for this. How do we navigate everybody's individual circumstances? How do we help people to develop portfolio strategy and think about it from that lens, right? Because we knew that just buying getting good returns was not enough. So that's when it all started. And so it's been 4 years now of development to build technology. And along that journey, we've gone from charging individuals $5,000 for us to build plans to now we're in a place where we can start to offer this technology to people for free. Now, it's not perfect, and we'll dig into the limitations of what we're offering now. But this is part of our mission. Our whole mission is to make property investing more available to people, to democratize property investing, to develop technologies and solutions that are going to help people to build wealth and achieve freedom, because we realize that's the biggest impact that we can have in our society, is to help more people do that. That's why we've bought over $1 billion worth of property. That's why we've helped people create more than $250 million worth of wealth. That's why we've bought nearly a property every 24 hours for the last 6 years. It's all because we've been driven by having an impact. And so our ability to develop world-class technologies and then deliver them to people so that more people can use them, more people can get access, that helps us to live our mission and to affect positive change in the society. That's what we want to see. And so with that preamble, that is why we're going to show you today how to build your own property portfolio growth plan. But before we do that, Gabby, Andy, is there anything you guys wanted to add?
Woo!
No, that was entertaining.
Well, I'm glad it was entertaining.
It's
And true.
And true, yeah. There's like we will keep talking about the necessity to invest. Obviously, if you're watching this or listening and you've listened to the last handful of episodes, we need to keep talking about it, because particularly, as Goose, you and I are here on this island living in our own little bubble, and we interact with Dashdot clients who are very growth minded. We talk to Dashdot team members who are very growth minded. And it's easy to forget that not everyone realizes that investing is necessary. Particularly, we go back to Australia, you speak to people who are not in this kind of like Dashdot property investing at all world. And it's hard because most people don't realize just how necessary it is, which is why we need to keep talking about it. We need to keep encouraging you, if you're listening to this, share this information with people, because it's one of these things that people don't want to think about, right? We if we're in our bubble, we don't want to think about the negative things or what might go wrong. We want to just focus on, like, I'm just dealing with what I can deal with right now, which I empathize with, but it's becoming something that we need to do, and it's becoming a conversation that we have to keep having with people. So I think it's amazing that we started with this point, because, as you said, it flows through to everything that we're talking about here in terms of the planning. It's like, firstly, understanding that it's necessary to invest, but then also it's not just about finding one property, because that will get you a little bit of the way there. But if you actually want to achieve your financial goals, you need much more strategy, which is obviously how we came up with the plans. So
100%. And another point that I want to make here as well, which I think is still relevant to this kind of initial kind of frame up. A lot of people want to own a home, but the issue that we face today is that because of the cost of housing, that is just the act of ownership is already becoming unaffordable. The friend that I was just talking about, the one who has kind of opposing economic ideals to myself, which is fun. Him and his partner bought a property for $700,000. I think I paid for it, maybe $750,000. 2-income household, no kids, 40-year-old professional, and he can barely afford to pay the mortgage. He can barely afford to keep up. I offered to, I wanted to take him on a trip, and I said, hey, it's all good. I'll cover the flights. I'll cover the accommodation. Let's go. And he still couldn't afford to go. And if that doesn't tell you that something is wrong, like when my dad on a single income can afford a property in 1 year with 1 year's worth of salary, with a wife and 2 kids on the way, right? Versus a double income, a DINK household can barely afford to hold one property that they bought for $750,000. Which, by the way, that property is now worth $950,000. So yeah, cool, it's gone up in value. That's great, good. That built wealth, fantastic. That's nice. But what that actually means is the next homeowner that goes to buy that property, because that's currently on the market, is going to have an even harder time paying for that property too, right? And so if you want to get ahead, if you want to get to that place where you can own your own home, which is what a lot of people want to do, investing is still the path you need to take to get there. Once upon a time, it was like as a choice. It was like 50-50. I could just go buy a home, you know what? And I can just pay down the principal and all good. But good luck. Good luck doing that because you're almost certainly not going to make it, right? It's going to get harder and harder and harder and harder over time. Or you're going to take a very slow path. You're going to take a very slow and hard path. So
before we get to, we should get into planning. We should get into planning. But something I've been thinking about a lot recently with us speaking more about this, it's like you and I, Goose, are very optimistic people.
Yes.
And I think for years that's been part, like we run Dashdot in an optimistic way. We are very we never want to be doom and gloom type people, or people in your life, if you're listening to this, that we're negative. And it actually is a topic that is hard to address without sounding doom and gloom. But it's also like you painted the picture of everything that we've done with Dashdot is ultimately to try and help people to achieve their goals. And we're realizing that this, we have to just address it. We just have to start talking about it, even if you might feel panic and hear this and start to freak out and feel negative about what's potentially coming. We are willing to kind of put you in that situation, I guess, to feel that discomfort in the short term so that you can take an action and move forward. Because we don't want people to just get caught in their own head and not do anything, or because they don't want to think about the potential negatives and just sit there. We want to be able to encourage people to actually move forward. So at risk of us sounding a little doom and gloomy.
So, but let me just challenge that, because I think you've raised a fair point. But my counter to that would be doom and gloom would be saying, hey, everything's fucked, right? And here's what you need to do is wave your fist and shout at the sky and tell everyone else they need to change and blame everyone else and do nothing about it. That would be doom and gloomy. That would be negative. That would be, this situation is out of my control and it's everybody else's fault. Optimism is saying, look at the situation. Pragmatic optimism, by the way. Pragmatic optimism is looking at the situation for what it really is and knowing that you can have the control to make it better, right? So I'm optimistic to the core. I'm going to die an optimist, right? Right? I've never lost faith in the human condition, right? And I always know there's a way. And so this is not about doom and gloom. This is not about saying all hope is lost. This is about saying, guess what? Here's the situation you're in. Look at the world around you. Understand your environment. And now let's look at the opportunities. Let's talk about how you can make it. Let's actually talk about solutions. Let's actually show you that you can still find success. That success is not gone from your life. It is available. It is there in your hands. You just need to know where to look and what to grab, what tools to use. So actually, I would just counter that and say that this is, whilst we do talk about heavy things, whilst we are pointing out that there are some significant headwinds for people to face, that's fine. That's fine. You can sail a yacht into a heavy headwind if you know how to tack, right? And so it's really just about developing the skills to be able to navigate these environments so you can still get to your destination no matter what life throws at you. And I think that is the epitome of pragmatic optimism. So, all right. So let us know in the chat if you guys would like to know how to build a plan. If you guys want access to the portfolio planning technology that we built, is that you putting your hand up? You would like access, Gabby? Okay, you've already got an account.
I would like to know. Yes, I would like to know.
All right, let us know in the chat if you would like to know, because what we're going to do now is we are going to literally show you exactly how to go and build a plan using Property Pathfinder and using the portfolio planning technology. The reason Andy is here is Andy's been part of the core team that's been developing this technology. So that way we get to grill him. We're going to treat him like, Bex is already into it. She's clicked the link and she's already building one. That's awesome. Great work, Bex. So Andy, we're joking around. Andy's going to be like Andy GPT, that when we've got questions, he's just going to pop up and be like, and funnily enough, I'm actually going to show you how he pops up on the platform too. I just discovered it last night. It's pretty funny. So, all right, cool. So let me share my screen. We're going to go through a few scenarios here. We're going to show you how to build a plan. We're going to show you how to build a plan without existing properties in it. And then we're going to show you how to build a plan with existing properties. And then we're going to show you a couple of different scenarios and talk through those scenarios and talk through some of the assumptions. Then we're also going to show you some of the other features on the Property Pathfinder platform so that you can maximize the benefit out of it and really get the, I know on the platform, if you go to the first page, it says we've invested $5 million. It's actually closer to $6 million that we've invested over the last 5 years in building technology. And now we basically give a lot of it away. Now we'll talk about what we don't give away and what we do give away in a moment, but I'm just trying to share my screen and here we go. Okay, cool. Now, I'm not going to be able to see the screen because I'm going to need to have some other stuff open. So if you are watching this, head to propertypathfinder.io. Gabby, I think we've got the link in the description.
Yep, it is in the top of the YouTube description.
Awesome. So if you head to propertypathfinder.io, you're going to land on this page here. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the platform and everything it does. And it's beautiful. How wonderful. So what you want to do is you want to click sign up. Okay. You're going to go to the sign up page and you're going to put in your details here and sign up. Now, I'm not going to do that because I already have some login details that I'm going to use. So I'm going to log in and I'm going to show you how to build a portfolio plan from scratch. This first one that we're going to do, we're going to have no properties. We're going to assume that we don't have any properties in our portfolio so far. We're starting from scratch. Okay. So I'm going to log in. Now, when you log in, you're going to get to this page here, your free personalized portfolio growth plan. So what you want to do is you want to go to build my portfolio plan, and you're going to click here. Now, for the purposes of this, the scenario that we are going to use is that we have 0 existing properties. We've got $150,000 cash. We've got $1 million borrowing capacity, and we've got a $30,000 savings rate. So we're going to work through this. This builder is going to help us to build out a plan. So let's click on Start Building. Now, if you had, and this is a really important question to ask because this helps to frame up like why are you doing it. I always like to think goals are motivations. Goals are what you want to achieve, and motivation is why you want to achieve it. But in this case, I'm going to say that if I had complete and total financial freedom, I'd travel the world, see new places, and have lots of fun. What level of property investing experience do you have? Well, I'm going to say I've never purchased, but I'm ready to go because I've got no properties in my portfolio right now in this scenario. What is the main money goal or main financial goal? I'm going to say that in this first instance, what's the scenario on this first one, Andy? It is equity. We're going to say we want to build as much equity. We're going to start with 150 grand of equity, and we want to see if we can turn it into 1,500,000. Right. So we're going to start. So we're going to see how long is it going to take us to 10x our capital with real estate. That's sort of broadly the goal with this one. Okay, so what's the time frame? We've got 10 years, I think it is, for this one, Andy. Is that right?
Yeah, 10, 15. The point is that we're going to try to minimize the time.
Yeah, okay. So does it matter what I put in?
It doesn't really matter too much. The AI is just going to pretty much
get there
as quick as possible, and the outcomes aren't going to change regardless.
Yeah. So we got that. So I'm going to say we've got $150,000 cash to invest. And we're going to say that we can save $30,000 a year. So 30,000 is $2,500 a month. Okay. So we're going to say we can save $30,000 a year. And yes, we know our borrowing capacity. I think. Do we know our borrowing capacity, Andy? We do in this scenario, right?
We always said 1 million.
1 million. That's right. Yes. Thank you. So we're going to pick that one. Borrowing capacity, $1 million. Okay, there we go. And let's say moderate. Sorry, I am struggling a little bit with juggling a few different screens here. Yeah, we're going to take a moderate, we'll take a moderate risk profile. Yep. And what's most important to you? Now, this is a really interesting question, right? Because this is going to dictate how the AI, and by the way, the AI behind these plans is absolutely wild. This is not, we haven't just plugged ChatGPT into the back end. We've had to build this AI from scratch using a combination of existing models, but then fundamentally built in a completely proprietary way. So the AI that drives these plans is not something you're going to find anywhere else. So this is really interesting because this is how the AI is going to think about optimizing your portfolio. So do we want to try and reach our financial goal as quickly as possible? Or do we want to try and maximize our goal within the time frame? So we picked, I think, 15 years. Do we want to make as much money as possible in 15 years? Or do we want to see how quickly we can get to 1.5 million? So let's select that. And we'll say we're ready to go ASAP. Cool. Let's submit. Now, this is going to take a couple of minutes to build. It's going to take 5 minutes to build. So what are we going to do in this 5 minutes, Gabby and Andy?
we could sing.
We could sing. We could
weather.
dance. We can. Now, what's interesting? Let's talk about some of the constraints. Let's talk about some of the things that the limitations of these plans. So what I would point out, this is the free version. So what you're going to be able to do with this is get a pretty good idea, but there's some stuff that we haven't built into it yet in terms of features. So we haven't built in the ability to add offset accounts. We haven't built in the specific ability to choose which properties you sell. But this is still going to give you a really cool pathway to working out what your options are. Gabby, I was about to change what I was doing. Can you reshare the?
Sure.
So what we might do is we might come back to this because I think fundamentally kind of showing you how to walk through that is really good. But why don't we just jump to some scenarios that we've already built? So Andy, you want to talk us through what the constraints in this? This is basically what we were building there in that intake form that we filled out, right? This is plan number 1 is optimizing to get to $1.5 million. So if we go to, it's correct, Andy, right? This is the.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the scenario that we would get after.
Yeah.
Wait. Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go. It's built in less than 5 minutes. Wow, so fast. It's getting faster all the time. What I'm going to do though is we effectively pre-built some of these. So let's just jump to this. So once you've built your plan, let me just show you. You click on access your plan and you're going to end up with something like this. And it's identical. That is so good. Sometimes they're not identical. So that is great. So this plan here shows us based on the inputs we put in, and I'm gonna come back to the dashboard in a second, but I just want to show you based on the inputs that we put in, that our goal was equity. We had a 15-year target. The target was to get to 1.5 million equity. We wanted to optimize for minimizing the time. We had $150,000 cash available, $30,000 savings, $1 million borrowing capacity, moderate risk profile, et cetera, et cetera. What that has shown us is that we're able to build $1.5 million of total equity by 2034. So 9 years, in 9 years, which is pretty good. Which is pretty bloody good. So that is a 10x return. That's 10x growth on your capital in 9 years. Now, in 9 years, you would have negative $8,200 cash flow in your portfolio. But remember, your savings rate is $30,000 a year. So this panel up here kind of gives you a snapshot of where your portfolio is going to be when you hit your target, in this case, in 2034. Now, by the way, if you, after this, you finish watching this episode, if you want to see Andy, if you just long to see Andy, you can click on these buttons and Andy's going to talk to you. I discovered this last night. I was like, oh my God, Andy lives inside the platform. I get to visit Andy whenever I want. Forever. Trapped like a genie in a bottle. So
good analogy.
Yeah, you kind of pop up like a genie as well, just summoned up. There we go. So what this plan shows us here is that within, by buying 3 properties, we're going to be able to get to a place where we have 1.5, we have a portfolio value of 3.1 million in 2034. 3.1 million in 2034. We have total equity of 1.5 million. And if we wanted to refinance that, our available equity would be about $890,000, which is pretty awesome. Now, what this chart here shows us is how the cash flow performance of the portfolio will perform over time. Now, remembering that what we entered in here was that we had a $30,000 a year savings rate. So, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in this year where we've got, say, negative $5,000 in a portfolio, and this year we've got negative $10,000, the additional surplus savings that we've got goes towards funding the next deposit for the next property.
Correct.
Right?
That's exactly correct.
Yeah. And so one of the things that would be different if you got a plan built for you by one of Dashdot's portfolio strategists is they would probably incorporate an offset account, and that cash would go into an offset, and that might actually help you to move things a little bit faster potentially. So what we can see here is the negative cash flow gets the deepest in 2030 at negative $23,000, but that is still well within the bounds of our $30,000 a year savings rate. And from there, it moves upwards, and the portfolio starts to consolidate as rents increase and the portfolio matures. And here, I'm assuming we have a rollover from interest only to P&I or something.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Perfect. Look at that. I know how these things work. How wonderful. And then we see it rocket up here. Now, noting that the goal for this portfolio plan was not cash flow, it was equity. We still get to a place in the future where we have something like $45,000 a year coming out in cash flow coming out of the portfolio. But the specific goal with this portfolio was, how do we maximize equity? How do we build our wealth? So this gives us some really, really great optics on that. So I think that's good. Any comments or questions or any thoughts that you want to cover off on this, Gabby?
No, not from me. I would love to hear, because I know some of you were saying that you are jumping on Pathfinder and testing out yourselves. If you have any questions that's coming up, or if anything on this screen, you're wondering, how do we get to that number? What does that mean?
Yeah.
What are some of the
We have Andy GPT here, so you can ask any questions
Andy.
you want. And so
Pepper Andy.
One of the things I love to look at is I love to go down to this how does your portfolio perform table down here. Now, you note that the timeline goes out 30 years, which is pretty wild. I like to look at this because this gives me, and I'm a numbers guy, so everyone's going to be a little bit different. Some people are going to prefer the pretty pictures. I think this is good, but I love it going down here because what this tells me is the return on invested capital over time in the portfolio. Now, one thing I would say about these portfolio plans is the numbers are simultaneously optimized towards Dashdot's performance, but also extremely conservative. So what we expect is that we're going to buy a good property in the right place at the right time. But the overall numbers in these plans, the growth assumptions and stuff like that are really conservative. Andy and I were actually talking about it last night. Like, I think the long-term average is like 6.5%, but the long-term average in Australian residential real estate is 8.25%. But what's exciting about this is this shows us that we get a 711% return on invested capital we get 817% in 10 years. That's awesome. Like, if you could 8x your capital in 10 years, that's bloody great. And what we see down here at the portfolio LVR is also really, really valuable because a lot of people get worried about debt. Oh my God, how much debt am I going to have? So yes, you have total debt on this portfolio of 1.595, but the portfolio LVR would just be 51.4%. So less than half debt. I mean, that's tiny. And this is also, by the way, why the cash flow compounds up over time, because your portfolio LVR is going down over time, right? So your debt is you're reducing your debt, which is maximizing your cash flow over time. And so you can see over here where we get to in 2054, $47,000 of cash flow. You've got an 11.1% LVR on your property, and you have $10 million of available equity in 2054. So really, in 20 years, in this scenario, you've turned $150,000 plus your savings. To be fair, to be rounded about the assessment, you've turned that into $10 million, which is pretty wild. So this is just one scenario. So let's walk through a couple more scenarios. All of these scenarios that I'm going to show you are going to still be based on the same inputs, the exact same inputs: $30,000 savings, $150,000 cash, $1 million borrowing capacity, etc. So scenario number 2 that we're going to look at is, we said basically, instead of what's the fastest time it could take us to get to 1.5 million, we said, what is the maximum that we could get to by 2040 in equity? And this shows us a different plan, right? And so this is really good because what you get to do is you get to do some scenario analysis and go, okay, so what if I wanted to optimize in a different way? Now, you'll see that the last plan had 3 properties in it. This property has got 5 properties in it. We end up in 2040 with a portfolio value of 7.5 million and total equity of 4.1 million, which is pretty wild.
Not bad.
Right? So in 15 years, we're turning $150,000 plus $30,000 a year of savings, to be fair, into $4.1 million by 2040, which is crazy. And by 2040, I have negative 234. Because again, remember, we're not optimizing this portfolio in this scenario for cash flow. We'll show you what happens if we optimize for cash flow in a second. So again, this kind of shows you what types of properties over what period of time. You get to plot that out. It's pretty exciting. You get to see all this kind of stuff. You get to see how this cash flow specifically is different. The arc, the timing, the change. We go basically neutral in 2040, but we still end up with, in 2054, we actually end up with more cash flow, which is super interesting. And if we go down here and again have a little look at the timeline, if we go to 2040, you've ended up with in 15 years, you've ended up with a 1,382.5% return on invested capital, according to this plan, which is crazy, right? You know, we've spoken in previous episodes about the fact you need to beat a hurdle rate. This is like the spoiler alert. This beats your hurdle rate. Like, this is pretty good. So
can we
yeah.
Can we just talk a little bit about, like, I'm trying to see it from the perspective of someone who's never seen this platform before, right?
Yeah,
We've
great,
obviously looked at this a lot. It sounds amazing. Can we pull apart maybe a little bit of what goes into building the plans to actually get to that result? Because it's all well and good for us to say that's amazing, but it could seem unrealistic to people.
Yeah.
So
totally.
what's the AI doing in the back end? Not to get too detailed, but just a little more detail of what's the AI doing in the back end to get to that 4.1 million.
I think it's a good question. Why don't I try and answer it first, and then Andy, you can kind of correct me. Okay, so what the AI is doing is looking at a series of constraints, and those constraints are outlined here in the input section. Those constraints are things like what is the maximum negative cash flow as a percentage of yearly savings? So if we say we've got $30,000 a year that we can afford to contribute to the portfolio, how much of that can be spent, right? Either in saving towards the next property or to cover negative cash flow or something like that. What is our total available? What is our maximum borrowing capacity that we can use? So what's the maximum debt we can carry at any point in time? What's our starting capital? So it effectively looks at these as constraints. And if we think about the three constraints in a portfolio, you've got access to debt, access to capital, and access to cash flow. And all of those are captured in here. Now, over time, as properties are projected to grow in the portfolio, then the capital side of that equation would also move because you'd have more equity and you can use the equity, and the AI will model the refinancing of equity from one property into another to help fund those purchases. And so you have all of that kind of complex reasoning that plays out in this plan, but it is based around those constraints. So operating within the constraints that we outline here in the input section, it then says, okay, well, based on those constraints and based on the objective, and also then based on a set of assumptions, which if we have a look in here and we look at these annual figures, based on a set of assumptions. So if we go down here, these are the growth assumptions, for example, and these are the rental growth assumptions. So based on these assumptions, based on the constraints, based on the expected operating costs of each property, which will impact cash flows, and based on the goal, what is the best possible combination that the AI can come up with to help achieve the objective with the constraints? Does that kind of make sense?
Yep.
Great.
That's
Andy, you didn't even need to correct me. That's awesome.
No, that's it. Like, the theory of constraints is the center of all of this, right? And it's something that wasn't even, or isn't even talked about in property. Nobody uses it.
It's not talked about at all, is it?
No, which is crazy. Like, it originated in manufacturing processes and logistics and all that, and even a ton of big business people use it, right? We adopted it for property, and that's how we are able to go from good plans to great plans, right? By optimizing the constraints. Like, what has happened here? Well, obviously, equity is the goal, so the preference is to go for more growth-oriented properties. So basically, at Dashdot, we classify properties. One of the criteria is growth, balance, cash flow, which is, well, growth is you are looking for growth and you can afford the slightly lower yield. Cash flow is you're looking for cash flow, potentially, of course, having a bit lower growth, a bit lower expected growth. And balance is somewhere in the middle, where you are looking for growth, but you require a bit of a higher yield because of the constraints of your portfolio, right? So what has happened here is, because the cash flow, so basically we don't have much of a cash flow constraint. The yearly savings for this particular scenario is pretty good. It's 30,000. we are able to model these properties as growth properties, but then the borrowing capacity constraint makes us have that little gap in the middle of a few years where we have to wait for the borrowing capacity to be restored. So if you choose another plan with completely different scenario, then you'll start seeing how the AI does different things, adds balanced properties here and there and stuff like that.
Well, let's do that. Let's choose. So let's stick with this because I want us to be able to get to a place where we can show people how it works when you add existing properties in there as well. So let's look at the final scenario for this this plan or these inputs. We keep the inputs the same, keep the savings rate the same, keep the cash the same, but we have no properties. But in this case, we've optimized for cash flow, not equity. So it's a very different goal. Okay, completely different goal. And this will then show us a completely different outcome for this property purchase roadmap. It includes selling down properties, consolidating capital, and so it's a completely different line of thinking. So to get to different goals. So it's not just a case of buying properties and letting them stack up. It's actually like, well, what types of properties would you buy? In what order? When would you sell different properties? And why? So you can see, let me just quickly go back. So in plan number 1, where the goal was how quickly can we get to 1.5 million in equity? It was 3 properties and we could do it by 2034, right? That would get us there. In plan number 2, it was starting with 150,000 cash. And in 15 years, what's the maximum amount of equity that I can get to? It's 4.1 million and 5 properties. And in plan number 3, the goal was how do we get to $100,000 in the minimum time frame? Now, according to this plan, we can get to $115,000 by 2040, and in 2040 we'll end up owning 6 properties with a portfolio value of 8.2 million, total debt of 5 million, less equity 3.2 million versus the 4.1 in the previous one at 2040. But we've got $115,000 cash flow versus in the last one 285, I think, from memory. Now, what's interesting and what's specifically different about this, and you can have a look in the side here, is that it shows us that in total we're going to buy 9 properties, but in the end state we're only going to own 6. So there's going to be a journey here that is going to help us to build up capital to transition into cash flow. And again, this is based around those constraints, because it's all well and good to just go, okay, we'll just go buy properties and buy properties and buy properties, and we'll just try not to get stuck or whatever. But actually understanding that what might be required for you to get the cash flow you want is actually to focus on growth in the first instance. You can see the blue ones are growth properties, and then allowing your wealth to build, and then selling down and consolidating that capital and buying assets which is specifically geared towards cash flow so that you can actually get to that goal. Because if you just started with $150,000 cash and optimized for cash flow properties, you may not build enough of a capital base to be able to convert that into enough cash flow over time. So understanding that you have to start with one situation and then move to a different situation later is key to building a strategic portfolio. But what I love about this is this really highlights how those constraints play out. Because again, it could have just been like, oh, I guess you just buy a cash flow property, and then the next time you can afford a cash flow property, you buy another cash flow property, and then the next time you can afford it, you buy another cash flow property, and then slowly. But you would actually get there slower. What this shows us is
dramatically different. Yeah, way less.
It'd be way less. It'd take you probably, I don't know. I don't know how much longer it'd take you. It'd take you a lot longer than 15 years to get to 115,000 cash flow. Maybe 25 years if you did it.
It might sound counterintuitive for a lot of people, but the cash flow potential your portfolio has is directly correlated to the amount of capital, in this case, equity it has. So the more equity you can build, the more cash flow potential you will have in the future. So
100%. Yeah. The way that I think about it is you, in order to have cash flow, you're effectively looking at a return on equity, right? So and if you've got $150,000 of capital to start with, right? Let's say that you could get a 5% net return on that. That means you're going to get $7,500 a year on $150,000 of capital. Now, if you had $2 million of capital and you could get a 5% net return on that, that'd be $100,000 a year. If you had $10 million of capital and you can get a 5% net return on that, then you're going to end up with $500,000 a year in income, right? So to your point, your ability to get cash flow is directly proportional to your ability to develop equity and capital in your portfolio.
Yes.
So
we actually have a quick rule for that, for those who are listening, which is in order to translate that cash on equity return into equity, right? How much equity do I need if my goal is whatever amount of cash flow? So if you multiply your cash flow goal by 25, you will roughly have an idea of how much equity you have. Now, part of that is because you have to account for, well, if you're liquidating your portfolio, you're going to lose a little bit in taxes and all that. But that kind of works, that rule.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's pretty close. So in this case, 115,000 cash flow, 115 times 25, it's 2.875. But we're not far off, right? So, yeah, that's super interesting. Super interesting. But what I love about this is that this shows us very specifically how these constraints play out, right? So it is okay. So based on the inputs in the plan, we're able to do this, right? This section here. That's going to then help us to develop the fuel to do this. But then we're going to sell these, and that's going to give us the ability to do this. So it's not a straight line. It's like anyone can put a spreadsheet together, put an exponential equation in it, and drag it to the right. But that's not how portfolios work, right? Portfolios have specific constraints. And what you can see here is, and this is the kind of counterintuitive thing, and we were actually talking about it in the last live episode we did. We were talking about J curves, right? This is how that plays out. So in the first instance, you're like, okay, my goal is cash flow. So why am I getting myself into a position where I've got negative cash flow? Oh no. Actually, what you're doing is you're building up your portfolio value. You're building up your equity. You're doing this. You're creating this so that you can create that. Okay. And that is the difference. And so understanding how to build a portfolio, we used to kind of talk about foundation, acceleration, legacy. I more think about it like generally people have got a similar goal. It's to get to cash flow. And you end up, generally speaking, having a portfolio with two halves. First, it's capital accumulation. And then you migrate, you merge, or you kind of like a crossfade, if you want to use DJ parlance, you crossfade by reallocating capital over to cash flow. You just like wicka, mixing it up.
I know about the fade, man.
That's a great point. If you go back to the dashboard, you'll see that, right? So to the purchase roadmap. So this is built for most people. Okay. So if you want to go extreme, like an aggressive, and you are a pro, you only need 2 stages. You delay the gratification as much as possible. You only build equity, and then only at only at the very end, you deploy it. And that's 2 stages. What we do here is, for most people, we do it in 3. As you can see, we have what we used to call the foundation portion, which is the first 3 properties. The acceleration would be the next 4. Legacy would be the last 2.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That is very, very true. Okay, so this gives us the framework for what you can achieve based on these inputs, right? So for those of you who are watching this at home, you now have the capability to go and build a plan, even if you've got no properties. And by the way, just as a kind of a quick navigation, so this again is your dashboard. So you can go down here and you can check out any of this stuff to kind of go, all right, how's this portfolio going to perform? And then you can check out the plan inputs to double check what you've got. And if you want to change any of these inputs, for example, if you wanted to change this to, okay, you go to create plan section, right? I'm just going to skip that, ignore that. And then in this section here, you can see the properties you're going to buy. And you'll note that the red symbols indicate that you're going to sell these properties as part of the plan. So we go growth, growth, growth. We wait, we sell, we buy cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. That's how this plan works. So now what I want to do, because I'm mindful of time, is I want to walk you through how to build a plan if you have existing properties. Let us know in the chat if you're finding this interesting. Is this good? Do you guys like this? Are you happy to keep walking through these plans, seeing how they work, getting insights on how to interpret this? Let us know in the chat, because hopefully you're enjoying this, because we can't tell. Maybe you're just sitting at home going, this sucks. But please let us know in the chat. We can't tell. We've got no idea, right?
It. La la la.
Right. So hopefully you're enjoying this, because this is one of the biggest gifts that we can give you, right? Now, it does have limitations. We're still developing this technology, but we've been investing all of our profits in building stuff like this so that we can help more people just like you. Now, what we're going to do now is we are going to show you how to build a plan using existing properties. So imagine you've got a couple of properties. Now, what we've done is we randomly selected some properties off realestate.com.au. So these are currently for sale. By the way, if someone's watching this and you're like, that's my property, sorry, we don't know who you are, and it's purely coincidence. But we picked properties that were for sale So we could kind of use real examples of properties that have been existed that we don't know who owns them, and they're not in suburbs that we're currently buying in. So that was the kind of strategy around that. So you can understand that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to log in and I'm going to show you how to build one using existing properties. Memento. So
now I'm really excited about this particular function because this is a brand new feature. We have historically not been able to include existing properties. So it has been a gap in our portfolio planning system generally on Pathfinder, because the technology is amazing and the AI can build this plan. But for a lot of people, if you already own a home or you maybe already have an investment property, it hasn't been super relevant because it's been like, okay, it's cool technology. I can see where it's going, but it's not quite relevant to me because I already own 1 or 2 properties. And so this has been a big feature that Andy and the team have been working on for a while now, trying to make sure that we can get existing properties into here as the base of these plans, right? So Goose is going to go through the process of adding these in, and you'll see they become the foundation for the rest of the plan, which is just crazy.
Yes, I should have. I'm not sure if I can go back. Can I go back, Andy? Yeah, I can go back, right?
Yeah.
So when I get to this section, question number 2, what level of property investing experience do you have? I own multiple properties, but I need help to grow my portfolio. Okay, so we're going to select that one. That's then going to ask us here, how many properties do we own? In this case, we're going to pretend that we've got 3 properties in this portfolio. So we're going to add those in here. And then we're going to start adding the addresses. So we're going to use this one here. So 17 St. James Crescent. Now, what's important to note when you're doing this, we want to 17 St. James Crescent, Muswellbrook. You want to make sure that you're actually selecting from this drop down,
Right.
because that is how the system is going to look up the property, and we're going to show you what happens when it looks up the property. So 18 Penny Street, Millbank, and 55 Bodycote Drive, Brookdale, right?
I love watching you type.
I'm trying to dodge the microphone. I'm not really that uncle. I'm just trying to dodge.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
All right, cool. So now we're going to add these 3 properties into the portfolio. So in the first scenario, what are we optimizing for? Portfolio equity, right, Andy? In the first scenario?
That's right.
Yeah. And the goal is the same, 1.5 million equity, right? It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same goal. We use the same sets. Now you don't type 1.5. That's what you don't do. You type 1,500,000.
Don't do what Goose does.
Don't do 1.5. So you do $1,500,000 is the portfolio equity goal. Time frame is 15 years. Let's put that in there. Combined household income, we'll just say that. Now, here's where it's going to be different from the last plan. We're going to say we've got less cash. Now, why are we going to say we've got less cash? In the last one, we said we had 150,000. But in this one, we're saying, well, we've already bought 3 properties. So we've already bought 3 properties. So maybe we've got less available cash sitting around. Okay, that's cool. So that's the kind of rationale there. How much extra can we save each year? Well, let's assume that we've got a $30,000 savings rate still that we can use for the properties. Do we know our current borrowing capacity? Yes, we're going to say yes. We've confirmed borrowing capacity, and we've got $1 million borrowing capacity. Great. Awesome. And in the first instance, we're going to say we've got a moderate risk profile. And what we want to do is we want to reach our financial goal as quickly as possible. And we're ready to get started. So let's do it. Okay. Now, this is going to build, but what we're going to do, just like, here's something we prepared earlier. Here's one we prepared earlier. So we're actually going to walk you through some of these plans that we pre-built using those inputs. Actually, no. In order to show them how to do the property thing, we've got to do this one, don't we, Andy?
Yeah. I think it's worth waiting. I
think it's worth waiting.
Just sit in silence for 4 minutes.
Talk about something else.
How about them Red Sox?
Okay, let me get my Trivial Pursuit cards out. I forgot my Trivial Pursuit cards. Hey, by the way, if anyone's watching this, it's kind of like socially awkward and doesn't know what to talk about at dinners and stuff. Carry around a deck of Trivial Pursuit cards, and then when you're at a dinner, you just hand out a bunch of them to people, so that anytime the conversation starts to drop, you can just pick up anyone on the table can just pick up a Trivial Pursuit card and just ask a random question, and it gets the conversation going. It's a great little hack for those of you who, like me, are socially awkward. So. Okay, so it's ready,
is it
man.
ready?
These are getting so
Oh, that's very
fast,
fast.
right? Okay, so now we don't need to talk about Trivial Pursuit
And
cards
social
anymore. We can
awkwardness.
social awkwardness. So this is super interesting, okay? Because what we want to do in the very first instance, we want to go in here and we want to look at this section here. Review or update the estimates for your existing properties. Because what the system has done is it's pulled the addresses into the system, but we actually need to actually then go and confirm that it's got the correct information. So property number 1, 17 St. James Crescent, we're just going to review that. And we're going to go through these details here. So you might want to change the purchase date. When did you buy it? How much did you buy it for? What is the current valuation? Now, this automatically pulls
Question, Andy. You might not know it. Hopefully you know it.
Yeah.
Purchase date, is that pulling it from...
Our third-party database, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's
I like that. That's helpful.
yeah. Sometimes it might not find it, right? And
Yeah.
it's because the data is not available. But it will
No, handy.
pre-populate as much information as it has.
Yeah, cool. Because a lot of people probably don't remember, so that's really handy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bex is saying that she didn't have that prompt on hers. Bex, what I would suggest doing is maybe try and build a new plan again from scratch and see if it comes up. Sometimes there might be a little kind of like glitch in the process, but 99% of the time it should work just fine. So if you haven't got this popping up, maybe just go and start the plan again, rebuild again from scratch, and then see if it comes up then. So what you should be able to do is check the purchase date. Where did you buy it? How much did you buy it for? What's the current valuation? Again, this is automatically pulled through. If you think it's different, or if you've got a different appraisal or a different bank valuation, you can change it. How much is the weekly rent? Again, this automatically pulls through. How much cash required for the purchase? You can add that in there as well. How much money is owing on the property? Like interest rates, all of this kind of stuff. You can update all of this stuff so you've got the most accurate. Now, how does it come up with the estimated equity? That is a great question. So, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong. We use an estimate, right? So we estimate it's 80% LVR or something?
Yes, for now, we're doing that. You mean like for this particular property before we
so
review?
how does it estimate? How does it estimate the equity of this particular property? So we've got the value, and then how does it estimate the loan balance and the
we assume that the loan balance is 80% of the purchase price. Now, it's hard for the AI to know what's your loan balance, what have you paid principal, if you have refinanced. So then you just edit it and it'll be fine.
Yeah, just so everyone's clear, we don't have access to your loan accounts randomly. every
That'd be wild.
I mean, that's slightly a little sort of like deep state surveillance type stuff. So I'm not sure about that, but so you need to go and update this, right? So all we've done is created an estimate based on an assumption. So if you know what your loan balance is on the property that you own, then you should update it here, and that's going to change the equity equation for that property. So let's just assume. Go on.
Sorry, just because we're assuming all of these are investment properties. So with the current rent per week, obviously if it's a PPR, you would zero that out. But the estimate that comes through, Andy, is that for the particular property, or is that the median for the suburb? Do you know?
That's for the particular property. That's
cool.
The estimate, because you get an estimated value, an estimate rent, and that is according to that cool
Awesome.
database.
So we pull an automatic valuation through and an automatic rental appraisal through. Again, if any of these figures are wrong, and if it's a principal place of residence, if this is your home, then you would have no weekly rent. That'd be zero.
That's right.
So that's effectively how you put in your principal place of residence.
Do we need to enter the cash required for purchase?
It is. You can just say 0 or 1.
Yeah. So for the purposes of the demonstration, we don't need to change anything. But if you know how much cash you put in, you should put it in, right, Andy?
Yeah. So the more you know, then the more you put, the better. There's only, most of it is required, and some of these are.
What this will impact will be the return on invested capital calculations.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So it's not going to change your equity, because if you've got the value and the loan amount and stuff, you're going to know how much equity you've got in the property and all of that kind of stuff, right? But understanding how much cash you put into the property is going to help you with your return on invested capital calculations over time. So
and if you don't remember, you could estimate it at like 25% of the purchase price or something, right? If you wanted,
depending on if you use a 20% deposit or a 10% deposit or something. So you could do that. But so the main thing that this is going to influence is the calculations about your returns overall. because again, your
Absolutely.
equity is going to be calculated by the loan value versus current value versus loan balance. So let's just assume that all of it, let's just say that all of this is correct, just for the purposes of the demonstration. So we're going to save this, and then just to kind of expedite it, we're going to assume that all of these details are correct as well. And you'll notice like this one purchase for 346, purchase date's different, all that stuff, right? So we're going to save this. And all of the numbers in there, like insurance estimates and stuff, these are all estimates that get automatically updated, either pulled through from AVMs or from assumptions that we've created, and should all be checked to make sure they're accurate. So now that we've gone and we've confirmed the details of these existing properties, then what we do is we go over here and we go update plan. And what this is going to do is this is actually going to create a new plan. It's going to effectively recalculate and recompute the plan based on having this confirmed and updated information. So then we click update plan, and it's going to create, you'll notice up here that went from plan 1 to plan 2. So that is going to create that there. Now, instead of waiting and talking about trivia cards again, what we'll do is we'll jump to some ones that we've planned earlier. So we'll start with this one here. And again, what we're going to do is what we did in these 3 plans. So plan 2, plan 3, plan 4, because plan 1 was the first one where we had to confirm the property details. So plan 2, plan 3, plan 4. This is going to be the same objectives that we had previously when we were looking at having no properties. So in the first one, it's how quickly can we get to 1.5 million? In the second one, it was how much equity can I create in 15 years? And in the third one, it was how much cash flow can I create in 15 years? So we've got the same objectives, but the difference being we already have 3 existing properties in the portfolio today. So as we go through here, you can see that by 2029, wow, that's a lot faster than this one where we had no properties, right? This said 2034, if I remember correctly. Now this says in 2029, so really just 4 years away from today, which is pretty crazy. But that is because we've already got existing properties in the portfolio. Now, you might look at this and say, well, okay, so I need to buy 2 more properties. That's cool. But where the hell are my existing properties? Well, that's easy. You just click this button down here, and like magic, your existing properties with the dates that you purchased them and the values that you purchased them for all suddenly appear in the plan. And so you get to see a complete plan. It's awesome, isn't it? Right? So this shows you everything you bought in the past, and this shows you everything that you're planning to buy in the future. So this is the past, and this is the future. So this gives you a complete view on this, which I think is awesome. So now what we can do is we can, again, we're going to be covering over the same stuff. So by 2029, we can get to 1.6 million in equity. Why so quickly? Because we've already got 3 properties that have already got equity in them. And so it's a very small step to get to the next stage. We can see that by 2029, we'll have a portfolio value of 3.7 million, equity 1.6, negative cash flow of just negative 873, because these properties, I think, are already producing decent yields, which is pretty good. And you can see that based on this plan, if all you did was that, then by 2043, you would have about $80,000 in positive cash flow, subject to loan structures, subject to, a whole bunch of other stuff, because everything's theory until it's fact, of course. And these are all forecasts until we update them with reality. So I think it's pretty good. You can see here by 2029, what I love here is the return on invested capital is 1,840%. So why is that 1,840%? Well, because I think it's probably because we put 0 cash required.
Yeah, that's right.
They were free.
Yeah. So these, according to this plan, we didn't have any cash required for these properties, which just means
they
it's
just
all
appeared
returns.
out of nowhere. Yep.
Yeah, which sounds like a great deal to me. So again, everything else is going to be the same in this plan. So you've still got the plan inputs here that you can check your plan inputs. You can have a look at the properties here, and you'll notice that it's pulled the addresses in here as well for these properties. So you can see those here. And then as you update the plan later on, when you buy these other properties, it'll update the addresses for those properties too, which is pretty cool. So any questions before I move on to the next plan?
Are you able to pull up the My Properties window, or will you get to that later?
That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Okay, let's do that now. Awesome. Okay. Andy, you might want to talk through this because I'm actually not that familiar with this. I didn't brush up on this.
Sorry, Blake's just asked a relevant question. Sorry, Andy. He said, how do you manually update properties with updated information as time goes on, and can it generate branch plans?
Is this how you do it? Add properties?
Yeah, so that's that's how you add a property. Let's say you bought a fourth property. That's where you add it. And if you want to update existing properties, you go to one of those. And
yeah, so let's just stick around here. So to Blake, to answer your question, let's say you go and buy a property. So let's say you've got this plan, right? You've got this plan here. Okay, good. These are properties I want to go buy. These are the properties that already exist. Okay, I'm going to buy another property. What do? Go in here and click add property. And then you start putting in the details. So you'd add the property address, just like we did before. So I don't know. Well, I'm not going to put in an address there because I don't know what to put. So we'll put an address there, purchase date that you purchased it, purchase price, value, weekly rent, all that kind of stuff. This will then add it to the portfolio. Correct, Andy?
It will add it to the portfolio, and then if in the next plan you create, it will be included in it.
Okay, so you would add it to the portfolio. You click add property, and then what's the process to regenerate a plan?
Then you go to you go out of there.
Yep.
And then you go to the list of plans.
Yep. List of plans.
The drop down, and then create new plan. And what it'll tell you is, do you want to continue? This will create a plan based on my inputs and my properties. Yes, boom.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah, so you click on that, and a new plan will be built based on the latest information provided in my inputs and my properties. So that's an important decision. I'll come back to the my property section, right? So if you change your inputs and if you change your properties, then you go back to here and you go create a plan, and it will update. It'll create a new plan based on the inputs and the properties. So if you add a property, or if you change your savings rate, or if you change your borrowing capacity, or you change any of those things, you change to the input section and the my property section, and then you click build plan, and it'll create a new plan, and then that will pop up in this drop down here. Correct? Perfect. So let's go back to my properties over here. And so what this shows us is we've got so you want to talk us through this, Andy?
Yeah, so you have a little summary at the top. So you have a summary of how many properties you have, what's the portfolio value, equity, available equity, all that. And then you have individual summaries for each property. Again, from the database, it's pulled the photo, bedrooms, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, all of that. You got a link there about Suburb. If it's a Dashdot Suburb, I think maybe if it's not a Dashdot Suburb also, you'll have some information there from Remy on.
Yeah. This is gonna just pull from Remy. So pretty much any suburb, it's gonna. So we'll come back. No, we can't come back to that. So we're in it now.
Trivia.
So whilst this is loading, I'm going to answer Blake's question. He's asked a question. He said, let's say you're super hyped with the tool, but you want to delete some plans. Like you've gone crazy. You've just created too many plans. What you would do is you would go to, these features are different. How does someone delete a plan? Yeah,
right now it's only the strategies that can delete plans, but it's something that we can make.
Okay, so right now, Blake, you can't delete the plans. You can only create more plans. So, just like
if you have like hundreds of plans, we could probably email.
You could contact support.
Just say, these are the plans I want deleted. But yeah, we should in future fix that.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that there are limitations with this tool, and there are features that we're still going to develop, right? So there are going to be stuff like things like this that we're going to continue to develop over time, and that's okay. So just going back to this one here. So that property that we clicked on was Muswellbrook, and this gives you a full breakdown. By the way, you will actually find all of this information in the real estate market intelligence section of Property Pathfinder. So you get access to the most advanced suburb research in the country. So it's got growth scores, cash flow scores, affordability scores. You even have access to our price and rent forecast models in here as well. Which is pretty exciting. So you get a full breakdown on the suburb information of all the properties you own. So you can, at any given point, check and stay up to date on the performance of these suburbs and make educated and informed decisions about what to do about your properties. So this is pretty wild. And this is... Sorry, I'm just seeing a message that's come up for review in there. So this is pretty wild to get access to this, because this is information. Like, honestly, most of the stuff that is in here, a lot of this stuff is data that we pull from other places, but a lot of the stuff in here is proprietary data that we've had to build from scratch. So yeah, that gives you a suburb report about the suburbs. Anything else we want to cover off in here, Andy?
Yeah, so you have the summary of each property, and then obviously the opportunity to update the details of each property if you go and click there.
Yep.
And at any time, let's say your rent has changed, right?
Yeah.
Then you go back, you change
Update
it
the rent.
and update. Yeah. Now it is important to point out that in order for these changes to be reflected, you have to generate a new plan. The reason is because it would be a nightmare if this would automatically update all past plans, and it would probably sometimes break them, or also you would lose the data of how that plan looked like back then when you created it. And if you want to see your progress, or how are you adapting to plan versus reality and all that. So
yeah, no, that's a good point. So let's say that this property, your rent had gone up and you wanted to increase the weekly rent. You would change that. Let's say it goes up to $600 or something. Then you would update the details here, click that, and then you would go back and you would build another plan. So you go create a new plan, and then that would be based on the updated information in the My Property sections. So, again, that allows you to go back to previous plans, so that if you've made mistakes, you've still got other plans to refer back to that you kind of got source plans for, which is useful, super useful. Okay, so does that cover that off for you, Gabby?
It does, yeah. Andy, I've just got a quick question from David before we go too far. Should I include my principal place of residence as part of the portfolio? Great tool, by the way. Thank you, David.
Well, that's more of a philosophical question.
What is your philosophy?
If you're not going to use the equity from that property, don't include it.
Bingo.
And then we can get more nuance, but
but that's no, Andy's exactly right. So and by the way, part of the reason Andy has been so instrumental in building this tool is because he was also one of our I think you were like the senior portfolio strategist at one point in time, I think, right? So you've been deeply involved in actually building these strategies out. You've also been a property specialist, property acquisition manager. You've filled most of the roles at Dashdot, so you understand how to think about property and strategy in a way that most people don't, which is actually why you've been so valuable and instrumental in building this tool. And the point you made there is really, really interesting. If you're not going to use any of the equity, if you're not ready, willing, and able to use any of the equity from your principal place of residence as part of your portfolio, maybe don't include it. Maybe just consider that to be off to the side as a separate property that you don't put in their portfolio. If you consider it part of your total capital and resource pool, then include it, because this plan is then going to think about, okay, well, how do we think about using equity from that? How do we do all that kind of stuff? You obviously will have no rent associated with it, so it's going to be non-income producing debt. That'll be factored into the plan as well. But that would be how to think about, okay, do I put my property, my PPR in here or not? Obviously, as you think about your wealth, that is slightly different, because you may have $2 million of equity in your PPR, and then you would have your portfolio equity, but you'd just be able to do those calculations off to the side effectively, because this is really your investment plan. Okay, this is not a total wealth plan. You may have wealth in shares as well, but you're not going to put them in here either, right? So think about it like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, Goose, before we move on, I want to point out that we are continuing to improve the way AI handles existing properties, and in the near future, we'll have a better differentiation between your home versus your investment. So the AI will be a bit smarter in terms of differentiating these two, and knowing how to deal with one or the other. So for now, it would be treated just as another property.
100%. Okay, so I want to walk through the other two scenarios, and then I want to take people, just to give people a couple of other insights into how they can get the most out of Property Pathfinder before we wrap up. So let's keep the questions coming, by the way, because that's the point of this as well. But let's keep things moving too. So in this plan, we established that if the goal was to get to 1.6 million equity, we could get there by 2029. So the next scenario that we did was, what's the maximum amount of equity and wealth that I could build in 15 years? And as you can see from this plan, right now, again, this factors in things like savings rates, borrowing capacity. It factors in all of those constraints in your portfolio. But nonetheless, this plan shows, and what's really cool about that, and there'll probably be you'd probably need to consider some trust structures and stuff in here along the way.
That's right.
Nonetheless, which by the way, modeling in the differences between personal properties and properties that are in trusts and stuff is not something that we've been able to build yet. So, but to do something like this, where you end up with 13 properties, I haven't seen anyone build a portfolio of 13 properties without the use of trusts. So there would have to be some usage of structuring in order to be able to achieve something like this, which we haven't built into the technology yet. But fundamentally, you can see what this pathway would look like. And you can see that we don't exceed at any point the negative cash flow limitation. And what we can see here is that we get to 10.6 million equity value by 2040, which is wild, plus $20,000 of cash flow, which is off the hazy. It's awesome.
And what's wild is
that
it's the same scenario as before that we achieved I think it was 4.1 or something, or 5.
Yeah. If we go back to this one, this is the comparison, right? So this is the comparison plan here: 4.1 million by 2040, and in this one, 10.6 million by 2040.
And we even have less cash, but we do have 3 properties, and that just goes to show the effects of the compound effect of having already a whole bunch of capital that you can leverage to buy more property.
Yeah, exactly.
Just doubles the outcome.
Totally. And it is a game of balancing things like cash flow and LVRs and stuff like that as well. And you'll see here the portfolio LVR actually sits pretty low. So, 68, 71, 65, 66. So these are not excessive LVRs over time. So that actually helps to support better borrowing capacities over time. When you have lower LVRs, you actually have better borrowing capacity. And also, as the rents in these properties grow, that contributes to support to the portfolio income. And that is actually how you start to expand beyond your baseline $1 million of borrowing capacity. You can actually expand your borrowing capacity as you bring in more income sources through those properties. So through a combination of managing LVRs, managing cash flows by bringing more income in through the properties that you're buying, plus using things like structures, which we're going to get someone on to do a whole session about structures at some point. That's how you get to do a property portfolio like this, which is pretty wild. And there's at least one person. There's at least one person on live at the moment who's on path to do something like this as well. He's doing it right now. Not quite a $20 million portfolio, but on track. So again, I think what's really interesting here is the comparison between this and this. But let's have a look at the final one. The final comparison plan in the first one, when we said we had no properties, we said how quickly can we get to $115,000 cash flow? We said by 2040. In this one, we said the same thing, but in fact, we could get there by 2035. We could get to 141,000 positive cash flow by 2035, still with 3.5 million in equity, but with 5 properties. So what's interesting about this is you see the composition of the portfolio again is different. So you have a couple of growth assets, and then what does it show? So what it actually shows is we've sold also the existing properties that we already had in the portfolio. So we sold those plus the 2 growth properties that we bought, and then we bought more cash flow assets. Now you'll note up here that this says commercial. Now, just so we're clear on what that means, that doesn't necessarily mean go buy a shopping center. What that could mean is go buy a $3.3 million quadplex or something like that. That could be going and buying a unit block, which by definition would be commercial because of the lending criteria and a bunch of other stuff. But it doesn't necessarily mean go buy a warehouse or go buy a shopping center or go buy something like that. What we're effectively saying is it's a higher value, specifically cash flow oriented asset, which again could be something like a unit block or something like that you could buy at this end of the spectrum. So we start to play it out like that.
Yeah, that's specifically the language we use with clients. Like it's you got to understand what are you trying to achieve. Look, it's the principle, right? The outcome you're trying to achieve. We have to choose one specific asset in order to model it, but the actual outcome is what you just said: high value, high cash flow asset. And then I said asset. It's not even high cash flow, high value property.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, we just to answer Charlie's question in the chat. No, we're not doing commercial properties. But when you get to a certain point, when you buy unit blocks and stuff above 4 units, it starts to become commercial anyway, right? So again, this is more of an indicative directional kind of point that we would be looking for a cash flow asset of that value not necessarily specifically that it's going to be an industrial or commercial or something like that. So this, I think, is pretty wild. And again, as you go through here, there's little explainers that you can use to understand more about how these plans work and what the different features are. Again, Andy's just gonna be here, living inside the machine, explaining everything to you along the way. I love that feature. I only discovered it last night. This brings me so much joy. So I think we've covered off enough about the plans. Do you think we've got enough time to quickly have a look at Remy?
Yeah, I think we do. I was just thinking about how important the selling feature is, that I think probably isn't generally spoken about enough in this space. It's like, you can have amazing assets. Now, these three, for example, we're assuming that you've bought them not with Dashdot's guidance, but they're still going to grow probably some degree. But even if there were like high growth assets that you've bought with Dashdot, because I know we have a lot of clients on, at some point, it's probably going to be contributing to one of those constraints, right? And so if you've got a particularly like a cash flow goal, it could make more sense, even if it's a strong asset, to sell it down so that you can continue moving towards what you're optimizing for. So I think it is like, if you look at the list of all the properties, I think there's, 13 or something, and we've sold half to be able to get to that cash flow goal. So it's just thinking about it. It's another tactic, strategy.
You own 5. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an important piece of this whole journey if you are optimizing for an end result, which is what this whole plan is about.
Yeah, and I think it's such a great point you bring up, Gabby, because a lot of people don't think about that, because they don't think about a portfolio with the kind of lens of thinking about through the theory of constraints. So the theory of constraints is what should be guiding how you think about building a portfolio. How do you avoid getting stuck? And so at certain points in your portfolio, it's probably going to make sense to sell some assets if they no longer serve you, or if they're getting in the way of you getting to the next level. And this is actually how, like, some people, when they're starting out, may only have the available resources to buy 1 or 2 or maybe 3 properties, but let's just say it's 2 properties. And then they sit there and they ask themselves, well, how do I get to 5 properties? Well, the way you get to 5 properties is you buy 2 properties. You buy them with specific characteristics that serve you to get to the next stage. Maybe then you need to sell 1. That's going to then unlock 1 step. That's going to allow you to buy 2. So then you go from having 2 properties to 3 properties by selling 1 property. So in total, you've bought 4, sold 1, owned 3. Then how do you get from 3 to 4? Okay, well, then you take another property. Or how do you get from 3 to 5? You do the same thing. And so this laddering up, it's non-linear. And so what you need to do is constantly look at how do you navigate the relationship between your available resources and the constraints that you have in your portfolio in such a way that you can keep moving forward. The end state is that you're going to end up probably owning something like 5 properties. If your goal is cash flow oriented, you're probably going to end up owning something like 5 properties in the end state. Pretty typical kind of outcome, you would say, Andy?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and that also kind of points to the thing that I was talking about at the start, is that less than 1% of property investors end up with 5 properties. And it's very hard for you to achieve the financial freedom you want with less than 5 properties. And so this is why we built this. This is why we steer it all around these constraints. And why selling is also one of the constraint management strategies that you need to deploy in your property portfolio. So I just want to answer a question from Blake. Is LVR generated based on the risk question at the start? I don't think it is. The risk profile question is actually more related to how much leverage gets used and how much negative cash flow we get. Is that right, Andy? The risk profile doesn't affect LVR.
Not at purchase, but yes, at refinancing. So the riskier profile you have, the more aggressive you are with the refinancing.
Yeah. And so if you want to get a plan with different details, please visit the create plan section, and you start again, and you can start, and that's how you can change it. Correct, Andy? So if you wanted to go back,
again.
If I go back here, if I wanted to change my risk profile, because just for everyone's benefit, we internally at Dashdot, we have different ability to change things, right? So if I'm in here, if I'm Blake and I wanted to change my risk profile from moderate to aggressive, for example, how would I do that?
So that's plan inputs. So you're not able to edit a plan once it's already created. Exactly.
But you would go to my inputs up here.
That's
okay,
right.
You go to my inputs, and then you change your inputs to aggressive. So let's just do it now.
Right.
Let's say let's change that to aggressive, and then let's update the details. And by the way, let's let's go to the My Property section and let's quickly just change these. And let's increase the rent to $500 a week. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll update the details. And then what you would do is, now that we've saved both of those, we'd then go here, we'd go create a new plan, and we'd build a plan based on the latest updates that you've got in those sections, and it'd build a plan again from scratch. So that's how you would change that. But it sounds like you already built about 100 plans, Blake. So just think about that a little bit.
One.
So, guys, this is how you can use Property Pathfinder to build your own property portfolio growth plans. So, and how you can run different scenarios to work out how you're going to achieve your goals. Like this is one of the most powerful things that you can use. Now, I want to just highlight some other stuff, because when you sign up for Property Pathfinder, you get access not only to the portfolio growth planning technology, there's also resources that we're building out in here. Look at this guy. Once again, living inside the platform. And we're going to be adding more resources here over time to give you more tools, more information to help you build a property portfolio to achieve your goals. But also what I want to point out here is Remy. We haven't really spoken about this, but this is like nothing else you're ever going to find anywhere else on the market, because it's based on Dashdot's internal real estate market intelligence technology that is not actually you're just not going to find. A lot of this stuff is proprietary. So the scoring mechanisms, all of this kind of stuff is completely proprietary. Now, what you can do here is you can basically sort suburbs by, for example, growth score potential. So you can go, okay, just give me the suburbs that have got the highest growth potential according to our system. It's going to take a couple of minutes because there's a lot of suburbs in Australia. And you can go, okay, great. Now I can start weeding through these. What's the median sales price? What is the cash flow score? Okay, so it's got a high Beverly here. It's got a high growth score, low cash flow score. It's got a 3, so it's got a moderate affordability score, and it's got a low socioeconomic score. Okay, you get to start weeding through some of this stuff and going, okay, do I like these these suburbs or not? Now let's just use Beverly as an example. Maybe let's pick Sorrento in Victoria. Actually, let's do that instead. So let's click Sorrento. You can, by the way, you can also just type in a suburb here. We can go to Sorrento in here. We can click that, or we could click it down here, go to Sorrento. And what that is going to do is that's going to develop a plan, develop a suburb report. Now, it is going to be calculating the growth scores and the population growth numbers, forecasts, and a whole bunch of other stuff based on the most current and up-to-date data. And it's also going to be automatically generating the text that goes into these reports to make sure it's current based on the real changes that are happening in the market, to give you the most up-to-date insights around what's happening in these suburbs. So that's why it takes a few minutes to build, because it's actually building it based on sucking in real-time data. So this tells you all about the suburb, insights here, growth potential, cash flow potential, affordability, all this kind of stuff. You can click on these if you want to know a little bit more about what these mean. So you can click on those to get a better understanding of that. Then what you can do here is you can have a look at the population information. Again, all of this is AI generated and is based on the most current information available. We also have access to the best population forecasting information available in the country. That's through a partnership with .id. And again, you can find out more about here. Now, if we go here, we can see that 15% of the market in Sorrento, or the industries of employment in Sorrento, is construction. You can see the diversity here. This is really good for understanding what the economic diversity is in a specific region. Unemployment, household incomes, all of that kind of stuff. Then also you can have a look at this section here, which I actually really love this. Yes, it tells you the median sales price for the last 12-month median and the 3-month median, median rental yields, all that kind of stuff. What I love is this, though. This is actually my favorite section in here personally, because this tells you what do people prefer. So this says that about 1% of people in Sorrento want a 3-bedroom flat unit or apartment. About 1% want a 1-bedroom flat unit or apartment. About 1% want a 1-bedroom separated house, which would be a bit weird anyway, a 1-bedroom separated house. But 47% of people want a 4 or more bedroom house in Sorrento, and 40% of people want a 3 or more bedroom separated house. So this actually helps you understand what the demand type demand is by dwelling type, which I actually really like. I think that gives you really good insight into the suburb when you think about what to buy. And in the key indicator section in here, you can go through this, and this gives you optics on supply and demand indicators, demand to supply ratios, median sales price, which you can see has been tanking in Sorrento over the last, 4 years since 2021. Was that August 31st, 2022 it peaked. Rental vacancy ratios, volume of rental listings, gross rental yields. So there's so much information in here. We can't give you all of the data sources, Blake. We do get some stuff from CoreLogic, but we get data sources from, you see here, like one of the sources is CoreLogic. We do have some of the sources in here, but we can't give you all of the sources. And a lot of this stuff is proprietary as well. Typically where there's no source, it means that it's a proprietary build. So, for example, the growth scores and the socioeconomic scores, we have to invent a whole bunch of stuff to come up with that score. It doesn't exist anywhere else. So I think we have about 16 data sources, but then we've had to develop our own interpretations for this kind of stuff as well. So, and then this gives you access to our price and rent forecasting model, which again, doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. But we're the first people to ever develop an accurate price and rent forecasting model for real estate in the world. And we've won a bunch of awards for that too, and you get access to that. Then this section here is also super useful because you get access to project information. Now, you can see here that the total investment in Sorrento within 50 kilometers of Sorrento is forecast to be about $28.7 billion. But then what you want to do is you want to weight it by probability, which is interesting because, as you know, projects get announced, but they don't always get completed. So what we've done is we've broken it down by stages. And so based on those stages, we've created a probability weighting of how likely it is to be completed. And then what we've done is we go, okay, what's the weighted probability? So we take that from 28 billion to 15 billion. And then what does that look like from an investment per capita standpoint based on the population in Sorrento? And then you can use this sliding scale to expand the range of projects around a specific location. So you can blow that out to 100 kilometers and see how many more projects are in there. We're at 423 billion within 100 kilometers of Sorrento. And you can scroll through the projects and you can see where they're up to. So you can see this has got a 30% likelihood of success. So then we would take the $500 million times by 30%. That would give us the probability weighted value that we would consider into the section here. So this gives you a really good understanding of the kind of projects and economic stimulus that's happening in a specific region, which again, I think is just a really great addition for you to be able to start to learn and grow and start to learn more about the suburbs that are available to you. Hoo-wee! That is a lot. We've covered a lot of ground. We have covered a lot of ground. I'm going to stop sharing now. What do you think about that, Gabby? Satisfied with today's episode?
I am. Andy, did you have anything else you wanted to just add about Pathfinder or not? Covered it?
I don't know. We covered a lot.
Cool.
Did I cover everything? Did I steal all of your thunder? Did I not leave enough room for you to kind of like look smart? You look smart enough anyway.
Wait, I need my glasses.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, now I look smart.
No,
all right, there we go.
That's a smart guy.
No, it's all been covered. I think the viewers would have a pretty good understanding on how to do this themselves. And yeah, cool.
Yeah, so let's just quickly talk about some of the limitations as well, though. We did touch on them before, but there are going to be limitations in this technology. I mean, it is free, so that's awesome. But there are going to be limitations in there, like, for example, how to select which properties to sell, how to structure things with an offset, how to, there's a lot more detail that goes into it. And so when clients come and work with Dashdot, we still have a team of portfolio strategists who go and build custom plans because there's a lot of optionality that we're not able to build into an automated plan, at least not yet. So there's a big difference between like if you're a Dashdot client and you go build your own plan and you're like, why is the one that I've got from my strategist different? It's because your strategist has a lot more optionality to really customize the plan and tailor it based around a lot more detail, a lot more nuance. And ultimately what typically happens is you end up with a plan that is either safer or faster or, some other kind of variability of that, which is more specifically tailored to what you need. And so that's why getting a custom plan is still tremendously more valuable than just building one on your own. But if you have nothing, then this is something, right? This is the difference between wandering around in a jungle with no map and suddenly being given a map, or wandering around in a jungle and then having a guide who lives in the jungle come and saying, hey, come with me and I'll show you the way. That's the difference between the different steps. So it's great to have a map, but it'd be a hell of a lot better to have a guide who's actually just going to show you how to get to where you need to get to so you don't get lost. That's the difference between having a strategist build a plan for you. So there is still a bit of a step change between those two things. But for now, having this technology available for you to use is awesome. And we really encourage you to share this with other people. Like, we've created all of this technology. We've put it out there for free for people to use, and we want people to use it. So if you know other people that are thinking about getting invested in property, they want to know what's possible for them. They want to know what the potential future looks like, because most people have no ability to visualize the future, to be able to see what the opportunity looks like. Starting with this, getting them to sign up to Property Pathfinder, getting them to use the platform, build a plan, it's going to be a great step for them to start to unlock and realize what their potential is. So we really encourage you to share this around. Invite your friends to the platform, share it with people you know. That would be my big ask, because that's going to help us to help more people.
And with that as well, it's actually a really good stepping point for people who maybe haven't been thinking about property before. But again, going back to the starting point of, we want to help people to realize that investing is necessary. So maybe they can do different variations of the plan based on their, like, if their income were to increase a little. So if they start with the plan of their current actual situation, what their income level is, what their savings, how much deposit they would have, and maybe they map out a plan and it's not quite getting them to their goal, they can do another variation where they go, okay, what if I were to get a 10K increase in my income, or if my borrowing capacity were to go up a little, or if I were to add, work on 20,000 extra in savings, how does that impact my plan? And it starts to help them to determine, okay, this is my path of action that will actually get me to the goals that I want. So it's another way to use it as well.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a good point as well, because like, just thinking about the savings thing, like, say your savings rate, it has a really big impact on your portfolio potential. And so you might be sitting there going, I guess I could save $1,000 a month, but what if you could save $1,500 a month? Or what if you could save $2,000 a month? Or what if you could save $2,500 a month? And what if the difference between, like, because a lot of people think about savings, or they think about like their savings going into their property portfolio, and they think about the loss. They're like, oh, well, I have $5,000 a month and I'm going to put $2,500 into my portfolio. And they feel like it's this kind of like that something's being taken away from them. Whereas in actuality, if you look, and so as a result, they may be able to save $2,500 a month, but they'll go, you know what? I only want to put $1,250 into the portfolio instead. But if you model the difference between you doing $1,250 a month in your property portfolio and $2,500 a month, you will see what that difference does. Then you get to ask yourself, what is the price of freedom? Like, are you willing to actually save that additional little bit and put that towards your property portfolio? And rather than thinking about it as an expense, think about it as your way of dollar cost averaging into your portfolio to get to your goals sooner. Because I know I would give up a lot of things to be able to achieve my goals in less time. But a lot of people can't see that. They only see the expense because they don't know what the end state looks like. And they go, well, I mean, if I could put $1,200 a month in it, that's way better than me putting $2,500 a month. So I'll just do that, because then I'll have more money to go play. It's like, but what if you could achieve your goals 5 years sooner? How would that change your mind?
Yeah.
And so playing around with those ideas, I think, is really, really, really important.
Yeah. You got to see it as an investment. Like, if I were to tell you, for every dollar you give me, I'll give you $2. How many dollars will you give me?
Yeah.
As many as you have, right? Well, this is similar.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, 100%. But I think it's a big mindset thing for people, because people think about it as an expense. They think, okay, so I'm going to buy a property and it's going to cost me, for example, let's say it's negative cash flow. So it's going to cost me $15,000 a year to hold a property or something, right? It's like, well, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. Or the other way you could look at it is, okay, you're going to invest, let's say $150,000 now, plus you're going to invest whatever, $1,200 a month or whatever it is into your portfolio, and you're going to get a return of 70, 80, 100% return on your capital. And I don't know, like, okay, like, sounds to me like I'm just investing. Doesn't really sound like I have a bunch of expenses. It sounds to me like I'm making money, right? Versus not doing that and not getting that kind of a return on your capital. And so, to your point, Andy, thinking about it as an ongoing investment strategy, like a dollar cost averaging type strategy, where you're kind of building your return profile and you're accelerating your capital. Like, I built a plan for someone yesterday, and actually not too different from from the first scenario that we actually worked on, not too different. And it worked out that he was going to get roughly a 10x return on his capital in 10 years. And it's like, okay, so like, your options are do nothing and don't get any return on your capital in the next 10 years and go buy a boat or something like that. or get a 10x return on your capital in 10 years. Okay. I don't know, like pretty good, right? So thinking about it from that lens helps you to stop thinking about these things as costs and start thinking about them as pathways to freedom. So.
Awesome.
All right. Great session. I've really enjoyed this. Hopefully this is super valuable. Remember to go and share Property Pathfinder with your friends, with your family, help more people unlock a pathway to freedom. Gabby, over to you.
I just wanted to let the clients know as well, clients that are listening, because I can see a lot of you. We're actually working on migrating your portfolio growth plan. So if you have had a portfolio growth plan built with one of our portfolio strategists, we're currently in the process of migrating that onto Property Pathfinder as well. So you'll have a login, and any of the plans that the team have manually built for you will live in there. That just give us, I don't know, a couple of weeks to work on that, but then we'll reach out to you and let you know that it's all in there. And then you can see your existing one. You can create additional ones. It'll all be in the one platform, which I'm excited for, to get everyone just in the one place.
Totally. Once we've started doing that, then there's going to be client-only features as well, like buy, hold, sell signals, and alerts and updates and stuff like that, which will only be available to clients too. So the platform capability is going to be pretty awesome. So
yeah, cool,
sweet.
Andy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks to you guys.
See you in the platform.
See you in the platform. Thanks, guys. Everyone who joined us live, thanks so much. See you on the next episode.
Thanks.
See you next week. Bye now.
See you next week.